I would love to get your thoughts or your first thoughts, initial thoughts on, on a dual degree, to be honest. But before I proceed, I think a quick sort of introduction is in order. My name is Anand Venkatesan. I'm the founder and mentor at Mentors Capital. Let me quickly tell you, briefly about myself. But before I, tell you about myself, I think here is what we are here to discuss, right? Most of us worry about myriad things in college. I know I was in your boots some time back. You worry about jobs that that you might be seeking. You might have higher education in your mind. You might be looking at masters in a technical field. You could be considering masters in management, maybe generalizing. Plenty of questions to answer: how to find good schools, how to create a strong profile, how to make myself job worthy. Infinite questions and infinite answers also to be found on the web. But I think the reason why I call this still something of a worry is because making sense of the infinite information is probably something that is very, very critical. All right, and that's where somebody like I come in. My name is Anand Venkatesan. I've done my engineering from VIT Vellore. I've also done my postgrad from IIM Bangalore. I have experience in sales and marketing. I worked with India's biggest FMCG company, ITC Limited, and I've had various stints there, managed branches. I've also been in head office, which means I've also looked at retail audits. I've also looked at marketing research, and I've been very, very closely associated with the brand managers in the company, right? So that's something that I did, in terms of a corporate experience. But later on in life, I think education was where I found my calling. So for almost 10 years now, I've been a mentor, a career guidance counselor, and I've also helped students prepare for a variety of, entrance exams. These include aptitude exams like the CAT and the Gmat, right? So that's what I've been doing in the past. And here is, Mentors Capital, something that we founded, something that we believe in very, very strongly. So I'm going to take a minute and quickly tell you about Mentors Capital. So you remember I showed you this word cloud and I said there are many, many questions, and the big challenge is to make sense of all this confusion. So Mentors Capital has a very, very basic idea. What we believe is that if you have questions, then the best person to answer those questions is somebody who's been on that journey, on a journey that is similar to the one that you would like to undertake. So let's say you want to go apply to a university abroad, or you want to study at a B school in India. Ideally, you should go talk to a senior, talk to somebody who's gone to that exactly same college or university, and get some opinions on, well, how did you approach it, right? Because you seem to have a profile that is similar to mine. And I think that conversation adds a lot of value, right? So how do we enable that? Well, we have a panel of networks. These are networks from diverse fields. These are networks that we've also sort of handpicked, individually spoken to, and gotten a commitment saying that, okay, I am willing to invest my time and energy into, counseling a mentor or mentoring a student into enabling, their career aspirations, right? And those kind of mentors will really, really make a difference. So what you can do is you can directly connect. We live in an age of digital connections. We live in the age of online education. So, at the click of a button, we allow you to connect with that mentor, right? And that's where I think success can be achieved. Since I talk about the network that we've created, let me quickly also tell you that these are people who come from diverse backgrounds. Today, we have Pavni, who's, herself a student who's going to relate her journey of, double masters and studying in Europe. But in equal measure, you will find people on our platform who are, past students who are in professional obligations today, working in, successful careers, or at the other end are faculty members or people who are sitting in on admission committees of various colleges. And so they understand exactly what schools and which schools and colleges look for, right? So interview panelists, academicians, professionals, well, you name it, the list is, expanding as we speak every single day, right? And last but not the least, well, we do offer mentorship. I think that is our flagship program, personalized one-to-one mentorship, which, by the way, is entirely free for the first time. So I would really, call out every single one of you to go check out our website. That's www.mentorscapital.com, and find a mentor that sort of fits your profile and your thinking and your needs, and get into a one-to-one mentorship. Start, booking and starting your and start your planning that way, right? But I think along the way there are multiple other things that we also support for. These include, preparing college applications, various components of that, whether it's shortlisting, writing essays, or preparing for interviews, or it is, preparing for that entrance exam, GRE, Gmat, CAT, or even TOEFL or IELTS, right? So that's the breadth of services we offer. But I think first and foremost, think of us as a, mentorship firm. Think of us as trustworthy people that you can confide in and get answers, right? So on that note, I'm gonna start off today's session. Well, do check out the website is the parting note here. Thanks for joining me today, Pavni.
Hi Anand, how are you?
I'm good. I'm just gonna stop my screen share,
Mhm.
and 1 second. Yes. Um, Hi Pavni, it's great to have you on board today. I think my video just stopped. Right. Thanks for coming on board today. Pavni I mean, her credentials speak for themselves. Well, she's gone studied at two of the best schools in Europe. She's gone to HEC Paris, and as if that wasn't enough, she decided to pursue a second master's from the ESADE in Barcelona. So I'm very, very glad to have you here, Pavni.
I'm happy to be here, and to all the fellow students who, are super engaged and interested in everything that we're going to discuss today. So welcome to all of you, and I'm happy to be here.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, Pavni, I'm going to start with obviously a little bit of context in today's day and age. I think everybody's curious, with the pandemic having raged now for a year and a half. How are things in Europe, right? How are things, as regards outside the country? Is it worth applying to? I think is the first question that everybody's asking.
Well, I would say if this was, 1 year ago, I would still be a little skeptical in my response in the sense that maybe it's worth waiting a year or, a few months till there's more certainty. But having just, come back to India about 2 weeks ago, I can vouch the situation over there is actually, it's completely normal. It's as if COVID was never a thing. So, I'm sure that's having a good time is a part of everyone's master's experience. So to start off, like, classes are happening in a hybrid manner. Most of them are offline, and the cities are open. So I would, whoever has plans and wants to keep them on track for this year, I think that there's no problem unless we see something substantially change.
Okay. That's actually quite reassuring because I mean we've had this conversation offline as well, where we talked about, yes, schools. I mean the situation in Europe is probably different from the way it is in India. So if you're an aspirant, no worries at all, right? Uh,
Yeah.
I think schools are accepting applications, and I think colleges are reopening little by little.
I mean, absolutely. I think another aspect to it is probably that I think like, the subsequent batches will probably see very competitive applications because there was probably, a year or two of missed sort of, applications where people decided to either defer their offers or postpone their plans. So, in that context, like, I think it's going to require a bit more of effort and, sort of commitment on, the applicant's behalf, I think, to get through for this or the next
Correct.
intake.
I guess you also need to be smart about it, because you need to figure out how many of these schools that I'm applying to have, the deferment policy, and if that's
Correct.
if the school does have the option of deferment, then I'm probably going to compete against a bigger, larger sort of competitive space.
Absolutely. Correct.
All right. So I think the first question that I should ask, a little related to the poll that we've just conducted, but I guess something that's on everybody's mind is, why should one consider a master's program abroad, right? And just as we speak, I'm gonna pull up another. I'm gonna ask our attendees another poll. But you could probably start off in the meanwhile about
Sure.
why is it that a student should consider a master's program, and what were your thoughts when you were deciding to when you decided to pursue the masters abroad?
Absolutely. So I think, I think the main and fundamental reason number one behind considering a master's abroad is, I think, master's is by nature a professional degree to some extent. I would say while bachelor's is still a bit more, it's still, I think, in today's day and age, almost like a basic mandatory thing. A master's is something that segues you into your professional career in a very direct manner. So the field that you do your master's in, or the geography that you do your master's in, is most likely going to impact or open up doors and opportunities for you in that particular subject and geography. So I think the number one reason for doing a master's abroad is if you want to work abroad, because there are very limited opportunities going to Indian management institutions, except if you're probably in the top 2 or 3 ones where you can think of living abroad or experiencing work life abroad. So while that's number one reason, I think number two is also exposure and the sort of curriculum that universities abroad offer. So for example, management education abroad is a very it's a very holistic sort of an approach where you do case studies and where you have electives, you have core courses, you have skills seminars, you have business projects. So I think that sort of also makes people I see a poll.
Yes, I just sort of managed to launch that.
I'm gonna give everyone like 30 seconds to do it, because I think it's very hard to sort of listen, and when I see like a sort of 50% rate, I'm just gonna start talking
Yeah,
again.
we'd love to hear your opinions. I think a lot of these polls are centered so that you can give us direction. You can let us.
Yeah, I know, absolutely. I see a lot of this, a lot of people have already actually decided to apply for a master's abroad, and some people are confused between India and abroad. I want to work after graduation. That's also a good approach, and I have not yet made up my mind, which is what most of the college students sort of. I think that's the perpetual boat to be in.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think when like some of the reasons that you need to consider while you're applying for a master's abroad is, I think, like number one, of course, rankings. I think sitting at a distance, we only can see what the credibility of an institution only comes from its rankings. So I think that's like number one source that people can look after. And I think number two, like you need to really, if you're considering a master's in a particular field, I think you need to really go deep dive into it, see what the curriculum is offering. I think often you don't look at the courses that a particular program offers. So for example, something like a master's in strategic management versus a master's in international management versus a master's in business management. Now, they all sound very very complementary and very pretty much the same. But I promise you, if you go into the course content, you will find a world of a difference between a strategic management and an international management program. So this also helps you decide on what are some of the courses or electives that interest you, or which part of a program is it that is really attracting you to it. So I think not only does this help you when you're applying it in your motivation letters, but it helps you in your self-introspection process. Like, this is something that really helps me, and this is something that's attracting me towards a particular field.
I think what you're very, very nicely putting in words is that, well, if you're applying for a program in management, you need to manage the process of applications too, right? Whether it's deciding which specialization, which field, or even deciding which school, and hence the rankings that go behind it, right? And those are very, very important words of wisdom. Do your research. You need to consider multiple factors, and I think a lot of this information flows through by speaking to the concerned person, by speaking to a mentor who's undertaken that journey himself or herself.
Absolutely. Right. I think like there is nobody who can tell you better than someone who's been in those shoes, right? So, and it never hurts to have an initial conversation with that person, because you never know what part of it can help nuance your decision.
I'm sorry to butt in. Interesting that you say that, because my very next question was going to be, so we've talked about planning and researching about programs in equal measure with courses, colleges. So help us understand your journey, right? So here I mean, during undergrad days, maybe you could tell our audience what you were studying, and when is it at Ashoka University? When is it that you decided, hey, I think I would like to pursue a master's abroad. I think that's something that fits in perfectly with my goals. And did you consider other options in India? I guess is also part of the same question.
Yeah. All right. So I think like I was pretty much a very, so to start with, I did my bachelor's in Ashoka University in economics and finance. So I did an interdisciplinary major. It's a liberal arts college. So, at that time there were the liberal arts subjects, but also economics and maths and stuff. They didn't have the business management, courses. So which is why I thought I'm going to do my undergrad in a sort of more academically rigorous field. And then I'm going to move on to business management, which helps me link up my theoretical knowledge with some, practical experience and further business education, to supplement the two.
Right.
But just like most of us are, I was a very hyper active sort of, student. And I obviously, because I think most of us, we want to go places, but you obviously have a luck factor associated with everything and a risk factor associated with everything. So I did not want to put my eggs, all my eggs in one basket, which is, I think, also, a very personal advice that it's probably not wise to, just focus on one thing. Obviously, it's important that you focus on something and get dedicated to it, but managing the timeline for yourself across different sort of options is also equally important. So what I did was that in the end of my second year, it was a 3-year program, in the end of my second year, I was interning every summer rigorously, and also in my 3-week winter break that I had. So I wanted to build my profile and ensure that there were no gaps throughout. I think that was something probably that in the end, in hindsight, really helped my application stand out. Mm-hmm. So in the end of my second year, I was doing an internship with KPMG where I was working in M&A. And side by side, I decided to start preparing for my GRE.
Right.
Because at the time, I was also not sure whether I wanted to do a specialized master's in economics or a master's in a business field.
Right.
So that's what attracted me towards the GRE personally. But I also had advice telling me that prepare for GRE and Gmat both, and then you see which one is best. But also, I think, you just absolutely cannot do that. It's going to, ensure very suboptimal outcomes. So I personally started preparing for the GRE while I was interning. At the same time, my college was having their placement cycle, which was going to begin very shortly. And we had some, tier 1 management consulting firms, the names, who were, recruiting from us. And I was shortlisted for those. So I was doing my preparation for business cases, problem solving cases, while also applying, taking my GRE and managing the whole application process. So I did this simultaneously with my undergrad, just to ensure that I apply and do my part. And then in the end, when I have all my offers, I can decide and choose and pick what I wanted to do.
Right.
So that's basically my journey. Very, very, I would say, like hyperactive, stressful. I did everything that I could in my capability, did not waste any time, tried to stay super focused, spoke to all the people I possibly could in my network regarding the schools that I applied to. So I think I applied to 5 or 6, of the top schools, and I spoke to 1 or 2 people from each institution, which not only helped me, understand myself, the sort of nuances of applying to each school in geography, but then also like helped me translate that into my application and motivation letter when I had some inside insights to the process or to the institution. So I think that also sets your application apart.
Got it. I'm gonna pick up on the inside information or thoughts that you had, but for now, I think a very, very important sort of notification here is that what you're trying to tell our viewers is that make sure that you have one plan, but you plan also for contingencies, right? So you were thinking of applying to universities abroad, but I think the focus was equally on finding that best coveted job on campus, right? That was available.
Correct.
So, like you say, I mean, sometimes it could mean that your hands seem too full, but then I guess that's the life that you choose for yourself if you decide to be competitive, right? And you should look forward to that, and it really pays off. as your profile does sort of attest to. But my question here actually is, how much do you think your preparation for the for your jobs and recruitments and eventually working with Carney, how much do you think that impacted your application to HEC? Because we all know HEC is one of the top schools in the world. We all know their admission requirements are stringent. So how much of a role do you think this played? And if it wasn't this, was there something else that they factored in to give you the admit?
Yeah. I'm just going to clarify one thing actually, because I think there might be a lot of people here who want to apply to HEC as well. So I'm just going to drop in a little note on how the program is structured, because I think that'll also help everyone understand my career trajectory better. So I did my 3 years bachelor's in Ashoka, right after which I went to HEC. So I got done with Ashoka in 2018, and this very same year I joined HEC. Which to begin with is a 2 years master's in management program, but it offers you an additional year that you can take to pursue an internship, because they do recognize that a lot of people come without any work ex or 1 year of work ex, which is not so relevant. So they offer you this gap year in the middle of the 2 years wherein you can intern, preferably 2 6-month internships or even 1 year long internship, depending on however you deem best for yourself. And what this does is that this helps you, number one, because most people get these internships overseas. So when you're applying for a job at the end of your 3 years, you have some experience, say in Paris, in Netherlands, in Spain. And that's why, I would say the HEC conversion rate to jobs is much higher than average universities, because they structure the program in such a manner that your profile and your profile and your CV is very well fit for the job market later. So I would say basically I did Carney for 1 year in my gap year. And I think it fed into my acceptance into CEMS and ESADE, of course, because that was my second year, second admit. Right. But to my first admit, I would say what factored in the most in terms of professional experience was these internships that I did in each summer. So right. I, from my first year onwards, chose, the sort of fields that interested me and interned every summer. And I thought maybe if I'm not going to find out what I truly like, I'll find out what I definitely don't like. So that's the approach that I had for my 3 years, so that I could, try and get as many experiences as I wanted. Oh. And, that along the process obviously helped me build a very strong profile. And I had some very, very good set of professional experiences on my CV, which set me apart in my application when I applied to HEC for sure.
All right. Okay, so I'm quickly sort of also trying to get a sense of the audience background in terms of undergraduate fields of study. It seems to be most of our audience is an engineering audience, as it is in India, as it is probably in top schools across the world. So that doesn't come as a big surprise. I'm going to quickly also sort of transition to this other question on double masters, because you brought that up, and well, I think it's a very topical question. CEMS Masters, is in fact, when somebody thinks of applying abroad, I think the poll results also sort of mirror this. I think the first thought is, well, I don't even know why I should pursue a second master's abroad. I mean, sure. I mean, in a program like HEC, which, like you rightly say, it's a very flexible program. It offers multiple. You can phase in internships, a couple of internships in between your programs. So it allows you to soak in your education, but it also allows you to gain that practical hands-on experience on your and even add to your CV, right? So from that perspective, I think it's one of the more flexible programs. But the first thought is, when I'm applying for a master's, do I even need to study beyond a year? Why should I pour my money and energy and my resources into an additional year of master's? Is it going to be worth it? Is it going to pay off? And is it going to be, or is it going to be at the other end? Is it going to be unnecessarily expensive, right? So what factors did you consider when you were making this choice? Obviously, I think the readers should also know that you got the luxury of making this choice a little later on, and some others might not. So maybe a little light on the CEMS experience and your take on that.
Yeah. I think something interesting in the beginning that you mentioned is that most people don't know why they should do a second master's. But in my experience of talking to people, people don't even know why they want to do their first master's. So that's, something anecdotal, but also very worth thinking about. Because if you can't justify the first one to yourself, then I think you're going to have a very hard time justifying the second one, because it is, it is natural that it requires more time and resources. And it's very important in general. I think this is also life advice, to have objectives out of everything you want to do. Because I would say traditionally, when you go for a 1-year master's, the program is only 9 to 10 months long at maximum, which means that if you join an August intake, by September or October, you are already sitting for the, you're already applying to internships and jobs. And by then, you do not know the first thing about the city. You have probably just met a couple of random people who you're trying to call friends. You want to socialize, you want to soak in all the sort of atmosphere that it has to offer. You're also highly struggling with your academics, because given that most of the people here come from an engineering background, I think it's a very different sort of curriculum altogether also to get used to, because it's very practical as well, and it's completely on the business side of things. So if you're coming directly after engineering, I've seen a lot of people sort of struggle with the basic business management stuff as well. So I think, so that's why like a 1-year master's is also like, for me, one of the major things when I wanted to apply abroad was that I don't want to go for 9 months and figure it all out at once. I wanted some time. And a lot of people I spoke to had advised that you sort of should at least have 16 to 18 months to figure things out for yourself. Because I'm assuming a lot of people, when they go for a master's in management, they don't even know whether they want to work in banking, or they want to work in consulting or marketing. So, you take the first 3 or 4 months to at least figure that out for yourself. Attend these sessions, attend these webinars, take courses and stuff. So, by that logic and timeline, a double master's also makes sense, because if your program is only 1 year long, then doing 2 years will help you have more time to figure things out, and also have the potential for a summer internship in the middle. Because otherwise, what a lot of schools also offer is a 9 or 10 month visa, and you're out and about by the time you figure out whether by the time you want to sort of end your program and apply to internships and stuff, you're no more a valid citizen in that country. So that's one advantage of a double masters, I would say. More time. I think the second advantage is also getting access to two different geographies and two different alumni networks. Because and that advantage obviously only comes if you do it from two different institutions. Because if you're doing it from the same one, then it's probably only the the delta in academic knowledge and all that sort of factors in. But if you do it from different institutions, like I personally did it from ESADE and HEC, for example, you get access to the opportunities that two universities offer instead of one. So that's also sort of an added benefit. But but going back to CEMS, because I think CEMS in itself is a very unique program. And personally, since HEC is a 2-year degree, in any case, and I just chose what I wanted to do in my second year, which was CEMS. It was slightly more structured for me, but sometime along the line, I think how most universities work is that you should figure out whether you want to apply to CEMS before you apply for your master's altogether. So I know of universities where you are admitted to CEMS MIM and not just MIM, and you don't get the chance to choose whether you want to be a part of CEMS or not once you're there.
Okay.
So, I would highly suggest, if you want to apply for CEMS, you start looking at the schools that offer CEMS and see whether you have this flexibility of switching midway, or deciding later in the process whether you want to do a CEMS or not, or if you have to do it beforehand. Because I know a lot of people who missed out on the chance because, of that reason.
Because they didn't apply right at the start. They didn't consider the CEMS Alliance on the day
Correct.
of application, and so an opportunity went to begging.
Correct. And I also think this is something that helps you get a bit of a competitive advantage. Like, even for example, if you want to do it much only later, or you want to take the call later, you can still already mention it in your application that, okay, hey, this is something about the university that really attracts me.
Right.
So this shows the other person that you've done your research and you are actually interested in us for a specific reason.
Right.
So when I applied to HEC, for example, I already had it upfront in my application that I want to pursue a double degree or a double master's with another school. And I think HEC offers this wonderful opportunity, which is what makes it my number one choice, for example, right?
Yes, indeed. So, but I think, a lot of people tend to also misunderstand a couple of things about, the CEMS Alliance. Is that while, as you're rightly saying, you might, from university to university, you might have variation in the way the CEMS Alliance gets chosen. Either you opt for it at the start, or maybe you're given the flexibility to come in, spend a term in college and discuss and find out more and then apply. But the second aspect, which also I think interests me, is it easy to get in? Because I mean, most of these alliances seem to be of the top universities in Europe, right? Even some alliance partners in India and US and across the globe, in fact. So a very strong network. So for sure, must be competitive to get in, right? So exactly what does the CEMS Alliance look for in a candidate? Is it, like you rightly pointed out, is it internship experiences? Is it the potential to sort of find employment in a foreign country, or is it something else?
No, good question. I think, yeah, this, firstly, I mean, just to clarify, I think the CEMS is actually a program. It's an exchange program that happens, between universities, where you can spend 6 months or 2 6-month semesters in a different university than your home school. That's basically what CEMS is. And the reason why it's so coveted, like highly, highly coveted in Europe, is because it gives you access to your home school alumni network and sort of everything. Then it gives you access to the CEMS alumni and university database, which is basically a community of all CEMS students globally. And then it gives you access to your host school's alumni network. So for example, for me now, it's HEC plus CEMS plus ESADE. So I think that's the sort of not +1 but +2 that CEMS gives, which is what makes it an extremely competitive and coveted sort of
So if you're looking for a job abroad, if you're looking to find employment and settle down in a foreign country, I think the CEMS Alliance is your great bet, because it really widens the network for you.
Absolutely. I think that way CEMS is great because, like, for example, when you look up on LinkedIn, I think you will definitely, have someone who's from a university, which is a part of the CEMS Alliance, or that they have done the CEMS Alliance. And This is obviously specific to Europe because CEMS is a purely sort of European phenomenon, more or less.
Right.
But I would say it is competitive. I think the CEMS has like 2 or 3 main criteria. So I think so basically CEMS in itself is coveted, and then the school that you get in CEMS is even more sought after. So for example, there are like top 10-15 schools, and then you get ranked in those schools. You get placed in those schools according to your overall ranking. And the way they make this ranking is that you have an interview process which explains why you're motivated to apply for a particular school. Then your GPA matters from your from your existing host school semester. Your internship experience matters a lot, and also CEMS usually has an additional requirement of speaking a foreign language.
Right.
So even if you have like a A1 in say French or German or Spanish or even any other language, for example, in the world, it's sort of almost a prerequisite to be a part of CEMS. But I'm assuming you can also pick that up along the way with like Duolingo and a lot of these other, sort of language apps these days.
Let's see if our audience has been doing some of that. I have just launched a loan on a poll on foreign language. Some interesting.
I'm curious to know what these others are. If you can just put them in the chat, because I see a lot of others.
Guys, if you're listening in, maybe you could let us know in the chat what language you're learning. Okay, I'm hearing Mandarin. Okay, very interesting.
Nice.
Very interesting one too. Yes, Mandarin. I believe there's a program, a dual degree program that has a collaboration between NUS in Singapore and a partner school in China. So maybe that's a school that you could look at if you're interested in masters. Any other?
And also, even, I mean, even like, for example, like a language is only going to, I think at the end of the day, even if not study there, then help you get a job in that geography. I think because, for example, today China is such a big market that almost every company or every MNC that's even recruiting from top schools in Europe has some openings which are specific to Mandarin speakers, because, you know, you are a part of an APAC team, for example, and then, you know, they only look out for those people. So really, it's one of the, you know, better picking up languages. Very interesting.
Okay. So did you go through this process too? Did you learn a foreign language before you went to France, or did
So
you?
I was actually already doing French in my school because we had to do a third language in grade 6 to 8. But you know, that's such a basic level of French that when you land up there, you realize you can literally, you know, say or do nothing with that level. So
Okay.
I was advised to do a crash course before I finally landed up there. So I did a 2-month crash course.
Okay.
And also HEC, for example, like I know also ESADE, they already have language programs as a part of the curriculum, which they encourage you to take
Right.
as electives, and you can, you know, sort of own your language skills once you get there, depending on if you want a job in that geography.
Okay. Okay. Uh, Wonderful. So that makes a lot of sense. You had a little bit of predisposition to studying abroad because of the language, that you've chosen because of, and also I guess from very, I mean, I think if I remember correctly, you mentioned that you chose economics and you chose Ashoka for a reason to build your core because you always knew business management was where it is. So is it the case that there was a sort of continuity in your thought process building towards a career in management, or was this incidental that happened maybe at Ashoka at some point?
I think for me, like there was no, I mean, I was always just ambitious about doing the best I could at my stage, because I think we live in such dynamic times that, you know, deciding 6 or 7 years ago that I want to pursue, you know, sort of this field or this sector. And also, I think in today's times, nobody has a single profession. So, you know, I think it was not that I was fixed on management. Like at some point when I was doing economics, I was considering the World Bank, I was considering the UN. With finance, I was considering banking. Then later, I was, you know, curious about consulting. So I think it's honestly about keeping up with the times constantly and molding your aspirations accordingly. What I think is important throughout, though, is, you know, like what you like the kida factor is what people say, like, you know, the bug in your mind to just constantly, I think, be a go-getter. And I think that's what keeps yourself motivated. Having said that, of course, I did not change my track from, say, an economics and management to a psychology or a political science, or, you know, something like that. I was more business oriented, and I wanted to get to sort of the corporate side of things or the startup side of things, if you know, um, not MNC. So that was continuously there at the back of my mind while I was, you know, undergoing this whole journey.
Okay. 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 In fact, just as we speak, I'm going to launch a poll and then we ask you a lead-on question. So the question that I have is,
Mm-hmm.
okay, so you're telling us you did not think in advance, but at some point in time you realized, hey, management education is something I need, I look forward to. But how about geography? Because surely you looked at, you must have considered the United States too, right? So there's this big debate today, especially with regard to visa and further employment opportunity about whether it's actually still worth applying to the US for a master's program, or is it better to study in Europe? Because I mean, Europe has these up and coming, MIM courses which are hugely popular, but US probably doesn't have as many options in for the 1 year masters. So what's your take and what was your experience, with geography when you were choosing geography to study?
Yeah. Um, so, I mean, I see a large number of applicants who are inclining towards US and Canada. So I think maybe, you know, it's, I mean, so what I sort of assume, um, I mean, and also this is a personal opinion, but what I assume from the people who want to apply to US or Canada right after, you know, maybe engineering or something, is that they're more interested in, say, an MS in a particular field, right? Like a computer engineering or a tech related field or whatever. Because in my understanding, the US or Canada is not, except I think one or two Ivy universities, they do not have, established MIM programs or even 1-year masters management related programs. What the US is specialized for is either the MS or the MBA, from my understanding. So if you're not looking at either of these
I mean,
and still considering
even if
US,
they do have the 1 year MBA or the accelerated MBA, some of the schools call it, it's still designed and catered for mid-level executive, right? It's still catering to a 27, 28-year-old who has some experience behind them, and not for a fresh graduate, as most
absolutely.
schools in Europe.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the US does not make sense without work experience also. That's the other thing. Like for an MBA, of course, not for an MS, but for an MBA. So if you're not falling into either of these two categories and still considering the US, I think you need to get in touch with Anand to, schedule this sort of call, because it's in my understanding and experience, I think it's not the the fit geography, of course, unless people have personal reasons. But I
It
think
is but natural for a person to think about the US first, because we think about the West, and the first thought is the US. I guess all this recent talk around visa and the OPT. So maybe you could sort of touch upon those very briefly, but go on to your thought process, right? I mean, you must have looked at Canada. I think every Indian does look at Canada. So you must have done that too. So how did you decide that HEC and Europe was where you wanted to pursue?
See, I think like from everyone has a sort of their own story, and what you do is you want pieces to fit into that story. So you have an objective, you have a goal that you want to achieve, and then you do your best to sort of get there. So I think, for example, if someone wants to settle abroad, live abroad, get the PR, or live there for a couple of years, work there, and sort of eventually look at being there, then I think US, Canada are good sort of geographies to explore that way. I think number one, because it has a lot of expat community, and they're not very foreign to the Indian culture or the Indian style of working and stuff, which I think in Europe is relatively a little more of a newer phenomenon. Like the rush of students towards Europe, I think, is a phenomenon which is more prevalent over the last 5 years, 5 or 7 years. Before that, it was US and Canada, or Singapore accordingly. But so I think for a very long-term perspective, the US and Canada are very good and settled choices that way. But at the same time, if you're looking for something that's a little more accelerated and a little more specialized, then I think the Europe is where it fits in better. Because also, if you look at Europe, the master's program, they have like 1,000 different master's programs in universities, right? So like I mentioned earlier, a master's in international management, a master's in strategic management, a master's in business management. Now you won't get this sort of variety in the US, because what the European schools do is really offer you that cutthroat or sort of that very specific education and sort of skills to get the job that you want. Whereas I think in the US, there are still a little more like larger umbrellas of master's educations that are happening. So going back for me, I think what I personally did was I first went up to the world rankings, and I shortlisted 2 fields for myself that I was interested in. So at the time, it was economics, a master's in economics, and a master's in management. So I sort of shortlisted 2 fields, and I looked up the world rankings for those, picked up the sort of top 5 or 10 schools, and I made a matrix on Excel with these names and the pros and cons of each of them. So, like what they offer, what is their employment rate, what are some of the specificities. Like, for example, some masters have like weird language requirements, or, some nuances. So I think that's how I went about it. And then in the end, I, sort of shortlisted, and this was across geography. This is not just for Europe, this is across geography. And then I rationalized that list completely to a sort of list of 5 to 6 odd schools, because in my bandwidth.
Did you seek some mentor help with that? Did you run them, get some outside opinions on them too?
I did, definitely I did. Like the ones that were attracting me the most, I think it was a bit more of a struggle 3 years ago, because I was not aware of any mentorship communities or platforms those days. So I was cold texting people on LinkedIn, and I was also, calling up, friends of friends and cousins of cousins who have studied somewhere. And then also, I think it was not a perfect match. So for example, in applying to France, I could only manage to speak to someone who studied at Grenoble University, I couldn't at the end of the day manage to get a response from someone who studied at HEC Paris. And in hindsight, if I had that sort of information, I think, it would have helped me prepare a bit better, at least, on the challenges that I faced once I got there. So I did seek mentoring support, but not officially, because a wonderful community was not available at my disposal at the time.
Sure.
So yeah, so I got some opinions. I rationalized this whole list, and this list consisted of a few schools in UK, a couple in Europe, and some 1 or 2 schools in Singapore.
Okay.
So that was what my combined list sort of catered to, because
so did not consider US, did not consider Canada. I mean, that wasn't on.
I did not. No, I personally did not consider Canada or US, for the simple reason that I did not find their programs as appealing as the European programs to me. And also I put those on an option for a double degree later, that once I have more information, I can probably apply to a Cornell double degree or a Yale double degree, which is something that is specific also to HEC, because they offer these double degree programs. But I left that to a later stage. And also there was a looming uncertainty, I remember, at my time, whether a 3-year or a 4-year undergrad is required to apply for a master's in the US.
The classic 14 years of education.
Exactly.
14 years.
Exactly. So that's also where I was advised by some people to, do a master's first, maybe here a 1-year master's or something, to complete that 16 years and then apply.
The 1-year master's works as the beautiful bridge to, an MBA in the US, because you
Absolutely.
find yourself after a 1-year master's, you find yourself 3, 4, 5 years of experience in Europe, and then maybe if your career needs a further jump, maybe an MBA at that stage in life.
I think another beautiful thing about a 1-year master's right after your undergrad is also that you are still eligible to apply for a lot of these programs, say MBA programs, that you can only apply to if you're an undergrad. So what I mean here is like the ISB YLP program or the Harvard 2+2 program and stuff. So I think you sort of extend your academic duration by 1 year to get that time to figure out some things and still be eligible to say that I'm still studying and I haven't gotten into the professional life yet.
Indeed, that makes a lot of sense. Okay. So at least you weren't so keen about. You were always keen about Europe. How much of a factor was cost into all of this? Because I think one thing that most people don't realize is that master's education in Europe is substantially cheaper when you compare it to studying in the US, because the frac costs are literally almost half what it would be in a comparative program at a Cornell or a
No, absolutely. I think there is, a 3x factor almost that is valid in a master's between Europe and the US. So I would definitely, I definitely did consider that also, because sorry.
I'm really sorry for butting in. So the other question that I suddenly remembered we haven't addressed about CEMS is, so you do choose to do a double masters, but is it at double the cost, right? Do you pay for a full semester? Is it going to be on the same lines, or is it cheaper? Is it subsidized in a sense?
So I'm going to answer CEMS first, because for CEMS, the way it works, actually, it's different between different universities. So for example, if it's already a part of your entire curriculum, like it was for me, you only pay the tuition fee of your home school, and you can, you get access to another host school and the CEMS Alliance.
Wow.
So that's also because personally, I honestly, HEC has a phenomenal sort of structure that way, and I think they have these things very sorted for themselves, which is also what makes it one of the best schools.
Absolutely.
So I think in that way, like, that was not a consideration for me when I was applying for CEMS. In fact, it was only a positive thing for me that at the cost of an HEC tuition fee, I'm getting access to ESADE and CEMS as well. So that was that for CEMS. But I also know that, for example, if we take HEC out of the picture, and if you're only applying to ESADE, and you can, and the first year, for example, you do a regular master's, and then in the second year, some people choose to do a CEMS, a 1-year CEMS also.
Right.
So in that, I think you, that is the entire cost of a double degree, like of doing the same degree twice.
Yeah.
And like, you know, you need to really like make your mind on whether you want to, you know, indulge in that or not. But then it does give you the benefit of having, you know, like all the benefits that I spoke about earlier. So that, and then, yeah, I think going back to the question between cost and in terms of, you know, different geographies, I think for the US, it's substantially higher for an MS and for an MBA. Whereas for Europe, you have a little more, you know, they're a bit more affordable, I would say. And in terms of loans and financing yourself, I think it's easier to get, you know, that amount as opposed to fund yourself for the US.
Got it. I think one obvious question, one obvious elephant in the room that we haven't addressed yet is about job prospects, right? I know you sort of touched upon them in terms of the network that you get access to. But I think the first question that anybody asks is, do all international students who go from India to study in Europe, to study in the top schools in Europe, you know, are there enough jobs available? Is the economy robust enough to get them opportunities? A, and B, in terms of immigrant status, are, you know, Indians who study in some of these top schools, are they given equal preference as compared to, or vis-a-vis, you know, a European candidates, right? So are we considered on equal footing with them, and are those opportunities really existing on the ground? I guess is my question to you.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. So I think on the outset, I think, so number one, I think we all have like aspirations on industries or companies that we want to work for. So I'm going to take an example. For example, someone wants to work for a McKinsey, and, you know, they do their entire research, they get into a good university, and it's, you know, they then decide to apply to McKinsey and Company or Bain and Company or BCG anywhere in the world. I would say like that is still not a guarantee. In the sense, like not even a guarantee. I would say the chances of getting there are very slim. To land your first job in the best, you know, in the tier 1 management consulting firm in the world, tough. And I think, you know, unless you go to a Wharton, or I would say like some of the very, very big, like I think the number ones on, you know, the top 3s of each geography, unless you're really there, it's not super easy. But what I would say is that people end up with something or the other. I will, like, sometimes you may have to tweak and balance your you know, expectations in the process, but I know of little or no people who have not been able to secure anything abroad. I think where the dissatisfaction comes in is where you're not happy with what you get. So, you know, you don't want to start with working for a startup sometimes, or a company that people don't know about, or is not very, very well known. It's in smaller teams, it's catering to some very niche market. So things like those, I think, like, you shouldn't, you know, the way to go ahead is that you shouldn't sort of fret in taking up these chances, gaining some experience and work, like, you know, working, gaining some skill sets, and then trying to transition into better companies. That, I think, is the way to secure employment in future abroad, in my experience and understanding. Like, not to have very high expectations from the first 1 or 2 years, but start somewhere. And these jobs are usually at competitive salaries, because, you know, globally there are very well established, like, minimum pay sort of structures, how much you pay interns, how much you pay you know, full-time people. So getting an internship with some of the smaller firms is something that usually most students land up in.
I think this is the classic question: should I go for a brand? Should I go for the experience of working in a company there? But I guess what you're also saying is that I guess it depends on what is available to you, and I guess it's also about how much you make out of it, right? It's easy.
Absolutely. And I think, it's also very irrational to expect foreign recruiters to know the sort of background that you come from. Because, it's not, I mean, now today, for example, if you are a recruiter and you have a student coming from, a Hong Kong or a Kenya or anywhere, and you have no idea about the companies that they worked with before or the schools that they've attended, right? So definitely it sort of marks a red flag on your application. And I think that's also understandable, where as opposed to, if you've worked in that particular geography in a small place, so you understand the nuances of working, you understand sort of the culture, you understand the market, and then you apply to a bigger firm. They know that, hey, okay, this guy has some skills, he's studied in a foreign university, he has some work experience here, and now we think we can mold him and shape him better to our particular needs.
Okay. But I think I should also give out a disclaimer that most of this, and because it's an engineering audience, which assuming that you're also looking at a technical master's, or master's in a specific field, is that maybe, this discussion or her opinion about jobs and finding jobs is also probably tailored more to the field of management, right? And less probably for a technical master's, because I do believe that for some fields, especially fields like renewable energy, that you might, consider, if you're an electrical engineer, you're applying, to schools in Europe and want to pursue renewable energy or some allied field, maybe in data science or technology. I think there exist many, many more opportunities outside, in your host country than do in India, right? So that's the other side of the picture where, I guess the grass might be green on the other side of the river too.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think like for people who come from sort of niche, engineering fields, there are a world of opportunities abroad. And, for example, if you're interested in renewable energy or, you've done an aeronautical engineering, for example, or something like that, I think like at the end of the day, your interest comes in the particular field. So even if you work in a company that is, doing renewables, but your role is not tailored to tech or otherwise, it's still interesting for you to work in that space. And in general, the number of firms doing these things abroad is much higher,
right?
On an average, in a general sort of level.
Absolutely. That does make a lot of sense. And so does your, I mean, circling back to your point about jobs and recruitment, is also, I think the audience needs to understand that the job market in outside of India, at least, it works very, very differently from the way it does in India, right? In India, we're used to this system of education where the college and the placements committee sort of arranges for everything, puts it on a silver platter and says, now, here are the jobs that you can probably apply for. But when it's outside of India, it's more you having to network and you having to seek out those opportunities.
Yeah.
And so it's like Pavni pointed out, it's as much to do with your motivation as it is to the opportunities being out there.
Absolutely. I mean, LinkedIn is your best friend, I think. Then once you're overseas, there's nobody saving your sinking boat.
Right.
Or your boat at all. I mean, it could still be afloat.
Right. So I think this was a very fascinating conversation. We've just hit the 1 hour mark. So maybe we'll open up to questions from the audience. I know Supraja has been asking me questions about chemical engineering in Europe. So Supraja, short answer to that question is that, well, I don't think I can offhand tell you about master's options for in the field of chemical engineering or after chemical engineering, but what I can say with certainty that I think it has a lot of linkages with probably production of chemicals and even the pharmaceutical industry if possible. But I'm going to have to check up, and get back to you. So maybe you could connect with me outside. Maybe visit our website and drop us a request to call you back or contact you, and maybe we can take this conversation ahead. Sneha though is asking us, can anybody do an MBA from India and then after maybe 3 years of experience go for HEC Paris, right? Is there, I guess the question that she's asking also has to do with age limit, right? So her question is, should one do an MBA, work for 3 years and go to HEC Paris? Should one do the opposite of, go to HEC Paris right after college, work for 3 or 4 years after that and come back, do a second MBA in India, right? I think that's the question that she's trying to ask. What's your take?
So HEC offers a couple of courses. Number one is the 1-year master's program. Then there's the master's in management program. Then there's an MBA and then there's an executive MBA. So I think if you've already done an MBA, anything before that stage becomes redundant for you to do. And what is left is an executive MBA, which I think also then is not a 3-year experience sort of thing, but also like somewhere down in your career, you do it. But pretty much like a master's in management and an MBA is very similar. I would say a MIM is a pre-experience MBA. So, once you've done an MBA or if you've done a MIM, I think there are very few students who do both. So then I'm not sure how HEC is particularly going to fit in with your, aspirations or goals, because it's essentially a management school.
Okay. 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 I guess that sort of answers her question. Is it a next question comes from? I hope that answers your question, Sneha. But Mayank, is asking us: is it possible to get a waiver on the Gmat or the Ielts when you're applying to a school in Europe? Right? Is a waiver a reality when you're applying?
In my understanding, the Gmat or the GRE is actually the single most important thing.
I guess the context here is also that I believe in the last lockdown, a lot of schools were relaxing, especially in the US. A lot of schools were relaxing their, the Gmat testing requirements, at least, saying that if you're an international student, then probably testing centers aren't open, right? And
no, I think like if we're taking benefit of the situation, then maybe there is some loophole here and there, but otherwise, but I also think Ielts is not mandatory for a lot of European schools because they put India in the English speaking sort of list of countries. So as long as you have a certificate from your institute which says that you did your bachelor's in English and stuff like that, I think the Ielts can be waived off. But I think the Gmat and GRE waivers are very rare, especially for some of the top schools. But there are also, there are programs that do not require this at all. So you can have a look at those if, that aligns better.
Okay. So, but the thing about, these waivers is also to keep in mind that, well, waivers happened in the first, maybe first or second lockdown scenario when testing centers were not open. But I think the test the conveners have also sort of adapted. Now, if you're taking the GRE or the Gmat, you can take it from home, right? So I don't think there is any constraint really to take the Gmat or the GRE. I think you can take it from the comfort of your home, and I think universities will be insisting on you having a valid sort of test score.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I have a question here from Achala. Achala is asking us, ma'am, can you give us some tips for GRE? How did you go about preparing for the GRE, and how do you tailor your scores to reach that high level?
I think for GRE, so my approach was basically doing the standard sort of crash course from one of the institutes, not taking any names, but just doing that and taking these booster sessions with them to just take some mock tests, do it sort of whatever area by area. But I think the differentiating factor for me, and I'm probably advertising this a little now, was the Magoosh app, because I think that's what was that notched it up a couple of levels, because it's an excellent app. It's paid, but the way they help you especially boost your grammar, sorry, not your grammar, your vocab, and especially the English aspect of it, I think it's phenomenal, because GRE has a very high level of English overall. So I think you need to focus a lot on your vocab.
CEMS is largely engineering, so I think that advice is also well taken by them, because English is.
I'm from a liberal arts economics background, and I still thought it was a considerable struggle. So I would highly advise people to sort of take that, and then also like the traditional reading newspapers, reading the book, which is I think Word Power Made Easy. That was also one of so I think that those were some very good sources for me, and you can already start with them, because I mean, who wants to have bad vocab in life anyway? So
And you must have obviously also, I mean, if you mentioned Magoosh, so I think a big component of your test outcome was the number of tests that you took, right? And took a lot of tests,
Absolutely.
analyzed your performance, and then feedback to the next test.
Yeah, I mean, I took a lot of tests, but I didn't overdo it because I think tests are they're very pressurizing. In those 3 hours, you just need to take tests to make yourself used to sitting for 3 hours. I think because we're generally so distracted these days, we can't even sit without touching our phone or things like these. So I think what that is just to get you into the examination mode. I think that's what tests make you do, and just manage your timing a bit better. But apart from that, I would highly suggest also doing individual questions and finding the unique strategies to crack each of them, at your own ease and peace of mind. Because once you've cracked it, then you can, of course, then you just need to take it once notch further and do it under time pressure. But at least you should know the strategy behind it.
That makes a lot of sense. I think if you're listening in and you're asking about how to go about preparing for some of these competitive exams, single word of advice, sort of cut deeper into your weaknesses, right? Figure out what is it that I'm getting wrong, which area, if it's English, if it's verbal, is it grammar, is it vocab, and then drill deeper if possible, saying, hey, these are the kinds of, so for example, something that happens is that when you're taking RC, reading comprehension questions, you can sort of drill deeper and say there are these kind of questions which talk about a passage tone or a passage, or ask us to infer something on the basis of the passage. That's where I'm going wrong most of the time. So you can drill deeper and you can find areas to improve, and also strategies just on the basis of the testing, right? So just keep that in mind, something that comes up in all of our mentorship sessions too. All right. I think linked to your GRE experience, Mayank is asking also about your interview experience. He's saying, how was it with HEC Paris? And could you sort of point out what exactly they were looking for and that they found in you? I guess you've already sort of answered that before, but maybe specifically about just the interview, right? Did you get a vibe of here's what they were asking me?
Yeah, definitely. I think HEC they sort of focus on a couple of things when what they try to get from the applicant. Number one is sort of clarity of thought in terms of motivation. So why HEC, why Europe, why France, and sort of a clear line of thought on what your business sort of, business plan, what they say is for the next, 2 years. So, and how this fits into your story. So I think it's a very candid conversation. The people on the other side are not trying to, intimidate you or scare you or anything, but they're just trying to understand where you come from and where is it that you're headed next. So, and of course, in that you need to reflect a very sort of, a well-motivated personality, like a good talking style, a certain level of professionalism, things like those. And then they also sort of focus on what your short-term and long-term career goals are, because they want to understand, for example, if it's something completely haywire, like I want to, do something, say, completely different, then it's a bit of a red flag for them on how this fits in. Because at the end of the day, I think what they're doing is they're just trying to benchmark you against other candidates, right? So, and trying to find the best fit overall, because it's a fit-based interview purely, unless you're applying to a technical sort of like a master's in finance or a master's in managerial economics, where they might also ask you ask you to quickly solve a little, case or a particular problem. But otherwise, I think generally they try to do that. They also test your level of awareness. So sometimes they ask you to talk about a business news or a financial news that you find appealing. So I think they check your level of analytical thinking as well with that, like how you can break down a certain given information into parts. Can you assess it? Things like those. But I also think, I know that if you've made it to the interview stage, half the battle is won, because I think the majority of the people are already eliminated when the screening of the applications is going on. So they have a very low percentage that actually makes it to the interview.
Right. I mean, it still is going to be at a factor of 2-1 or 3-1, but the odds are substantially higher once you've been shortlisted. But by no means should you be taking it easy.
No, not at all. I mean, not at all. That's obviously not what I want to say, but to say also that, like, you haven't made it till the interview process till you actually haven't made it. So any interview related advice is only valid once you are at that stage also, because
It surely makes sense, because all of what you described in terms of the script of an interview, most of it would have actually featured on your application in the first place, right? About why you want to apply for a program in management, what your career plans are, and how you think Paris and HEC can add value to your candidature. I think it's something that you need to spell out even in your statement of purpose on the application.
Absolutely.
And I guess much like most interviews, I mean, I'm answering my own partly here, and I'm paraphrasing what Pavni said, is that I guess what they're trying to do is establish, how strongly oriented you are towards the program in management, and how much of a conviction you already have, right? Is there is it consistent, and is there a reasonable is it reasonable to expect to be successful in that?
And I think they also do end up asking you some candid questions like why France, and what is it about the particular geography that and what if you don't get a job here, what is your plan B? So you may be caught in a couple of those things, but also it's only kind of to have that conversation and sometimes see what your tipping point is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Interesting. Yes, that does make a lot of sense. Well, I think people have also run out of questions. If there are any, please do post them right away, because we are about to sort of close this out. Well, I don't know about the rest of us, but I think this was an enthralling conversation for sure, Pavni. I think you've given us a lot of insight in the mindset that the student needs to have, and I think the audience is going to take that home today, is be able to digest that. I think so. Thanks a lot for coming on board. Thanks for taking time on a Sunday. I know personal time and professional times need to be sort of put aside, but thanks for making this commitment as a mentor. And for the audience, I would really like to thank ESADE for organizing this. But more importantly, you've been a lovely audience. You've been answering all our questions. You've been patient. It's been over an hour now, and you're still hanging around. So thanks for your patience. I hope you guys enjoyed this. And if you have any queries, please do reach out to us. I have posted my website in the link. That's www.mentorscapital.com. Pavni and many other mentors are available on the website. You can start visiting the website. You can start making your bookings. So do start that right now, and I'll wish you all the best in your future endeavors.
Yeah, good luck to everyone, and thanks for having me out.
Wonderful. Okay, just as we close, I think Diksha's posted a question. I'm just going to take it because it's come up.
Yeah, why not?
Applying for a master's MS abroad, do universities see your undergrad GPA according to the university you've completed? I guess the question is on the lines of, my university is not very liberal with marks, and so my CGPA is going to be low. So do they tailor for that? Well, yes and no. I guess it depends on how well known your university is and how much of an alumni the university has. But in a broader sense, I think it's CGPA. It's supposed to be anyway normalized, right? So I think it is in itself comparable across universities, across grading systems. So, well, my advice to you would be, within your own system, try to fight this battle or try to find this means of how do I improve my GPA. And outside of it, my recommendation would be strengthen some other aspect of your candidature, because if academics you feel are on CGPA counts, your academics profile is going to be weak, then maybe bolster your Gmat GRE score, or maybe bolster your industry experience or interaction by way of internships, right? So try to sort of balance it out in case something like this is troubling you, Diksha.
Yeah, I think also, like, you can you should showcase, like Anand said, a strong balance it out something else. Have a strong motivation. Maybe there's a reason why your marks are low. You can also consider mentioning that, but think thoroughly through it. And I would never discourage someone from applying because of their undergrad GPA, because I think, like, every university has their own system of grading, and also foreign universities completely understand that, which is where the GRE GMAT comes in, and it's to put sort of people on the same pedestal while they rank, because globally there are no nuances to that. So I think the single most advice is to get that up.
end of the day, your academic CGPA, it just indicates whether you're analytical in thought process, right? And that information can flow out from the GRE Gmat score that you have, right? So
absolutely, and like maybe the number that you think is too low, it's probably average, because it's not. So don't beat yourself about it also too much.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Thanks.
All right.
Thanks for coming on board, Pavni. Thanks for the audience. And you guys have a great day.
Yeah. Thanks. Bye all.